It started with one donation, signed by Camilla, logged in the system. But when a royal guard followed the receipt, he found no record of it, no ledger, no organisation, just a trail of shell companies and an encrypted stamp tied to military clearance. The deeper he dug, the stranger it got. Charities that didn't exist, events that never happened, and thousands in royal funds routed straight into something no one had authorised. Because behind the Queen Consort's smiling photos was a shadow network, not of donors, but of power brokers. And before we show you the private conversation he overheard, and the exact moment the system tried to erase the evidence, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, and hit subscribe with the bell icon turned on. Because today wasn't about following protocol, it was about following the money. The rain had softened to mist by the time Sergeant Damon Crestwood keyed into the Royal Finance Annex. Windsor Castle had long since quieted. No footsteps in the corridors, no aides rushing back from receptions, no movement beyond the distant shuffle of custodians. Just the hum of old systems processing new data. The annex wasn't on any visitor tour. Tucked behind the northern administrative wing, its sandstone arch bore no royal crest, only a brushed steel plate, reading records and routing, restricted access. Inside, rows of secured terminals blinked quietly in the low light. It smelled faintly of stone polish and warm circuits. Damon moved like he always did, crisp, measured, no wasted motion. His Coldstream Guard uniform was immaculate, even on night detail, white gloves tucked under one arm as he crossed to his usual desk near the back, where the donation clearance queue fed directly from the Royal Secretariat's ledger. His role wasn't ceremonial, not here. It was what the household now called internal integrity liaison, a quiet fusion of security and oversight, watching what came in, watching harder what went out. He sat, logged in, brought up the past week's patronage disbursements. Most were routine, known charities, clear routing, matching event logs. But one batch caught his eye. 10 transfers made in the Queen Consort's name over the span of a single week, all to different regional organisations. Different names, different missions, but the same back-end routing code. He frowned. That wasn't normal. UK philanthropic codes were unique per organisation. Even umbrella charities used sub-coded branches. But this routing signature wasn't just shared, it was identical. An internal wallet hash, untraceable to any registered non-profit. He clicked deeper. The listed events matched recent headlines. A youth literacy pledge in Birmingham, a rural arts grant in Yorkshire, a restoration push for an old war memorial. All outwardly noble, but the funds, they all vanished into a shadowed shell, as if laundered through goodwill. Damon tapped the desk, eyes narrowing. He flagged the transfers, not for suspicion, not yet, just review. A red tab appeared next to the entries. A notification logged silently to the review queue. Behind him, the door creaked open. An older man in grey maintenance coveralls wheeled in a mop trolley. He nodded at Damon, then glanced at the screen. "Still on donations?" he asked casually. Damon nodded once. The man squinted at the numbers. "Those aren't charity routing numbers, son. I did MOD logistics back in '92. Those look like parliamentary tags." Damon paused. He turned back slowly. Reopened Camilla's latest funding bundle, titled Youth Literacy Initiative, QL47. The same code appeared again. Same unregistered wallet. Same discreet looping route. Same eerie silence in the logs. His screen dimmed slightly as the system queued the next file, but Damon didn't look away. Something wasn't right. He leaned forward, fingers tightening around the mouse. He wasn't looking at a donation. He was looking at a pattern. A quiet, elegant redirection of power, hiding in plain sight. And it had just been signed off under Queen Camilla's name. Damon keyed into the Royal Household archive at a slightly faster rhythm than usual. Not rushed. He didn't rush, but sharpened, focused. The kind of pace that came when a detail lodged itself too firmly to ignore. He pulled up the suspicious routing ID and ran it through the internal search engine. The system blinked once, then returned a single line. No record found. No record. No placeholder. No historical entry. No redacted link, nothing. That wasn't possible. Every donation logged under a senior royal's name, even those later voided, produced an archival stub. Even errors created correction tags. But this was a ghost entry wearing a crown signature. He tried again, this time running a parallel search through the Finance Annex's physical archive catalogue. The metal drawers clattered softly as he slid one open and thumbed past labelled folders. Heritage Trust Fund, Borough Initiatives, Camilla, Patronage Events, AH. Nothing matched the code. He sat back, exhaling through his nose. Someone had submitted a donation through Camilla's office without leaving a trace inside Camilla's actual office. He reopened the last 5 reports. There it was again. Camilla's Rural Outreach Fund transfer. Same back-end wallet. The Hospice Renovation Grant. Same signature. The Heritage Choir sponsorship. Publicised heavily, complete with photos of smiling children, yet the money had vanished into the same unregistered funnel, every one of them publicly associated with her name, every one of them, on paper, clean, every one of them rooted into the same dark corridor of money. Damon muttered under his breath, "Someone's using her patronage as a cover." Not an accusation, a fact, if these patterns held. He printed a physical ledger of the 10 most recent transfers, the machine whirring quietly in the corner. As the pages slid out, something caught his eye. A faint, almost invisible QR-style routing mark in the bottom corner of each print. That wasn't standard. Royal donation receipts used alphanumeric stamps, not scannable codes, and certainly nothing that traced outwards. He brought the paper closer to the terminal light, tilting it slightly. The code shimmered faintly, almost like it was intentionally under-inked. He lifted his phone, scanned it. Access restricted. MOD encryption tier 2. Damon froze. Why would a public donation receipt contain MOD tier encryption? Why would a literacy event ledger lock itself behind defense-grade clearance? He scanned again. Same result. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. He turned the page and scanned the second code. Same encryption. Third, same. Whoever embedded these tags didn't expect anyone at Windsor to scan them. They were designed to be invisible in plain sight, a private pipeline buried inside a public donation trail. He sat back, heart steady but heavy, absorbing the implication. This wasn't sloppy paperwork. This wasn't an accounting error. This was a structure, a shadow pathway, a funnel that someone had engineered, using Camilla's philanthropic banner as the storefront. And whoever built it had tied it to defense encryption. The threat wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real. And it was already inside Windsor's walls. The next morning came without sunlight. Windsor's east windows glowed dull grey, the sky thick with overcast as a light wind pushed damp air through the hedged perimeter. In the Royal Finance Annex, the warm light from Damon's desk lamp hadn't dimmed all night. By mid-morning, he'd requested a discreet in-person consult with the Treasury. It was granted without questions. Eleanor Marsh arrived just past 11, wrapped in a charcoal coat and thin navy scarf, her badge clipped just below her collar. Royal Accounts Liaison, HM Treasury. She moved with the kind of quiet urgency reserved for people who weren't new to institutional messes. Damon met her in a side room used for archival coordination. No windows. Just a long table, bare walls, and a single console screen. She didn't sit. Just scanned the printouts he handed her in steady silence, eyes flicking across routing codes, event titles, and ledger columns. These routing signatures, she said at last, tapping the faint numbers printed along the bottom margin, they don't belong to charities. Damon waited. They belong to advisory councils, internal government ones, mostly policy accelerators and strategic dialogue groups. He frowned. They're not supposed to receive royal-linked funds. No, she replied, they're not. That would be a conflict of constitutional neutrality. She circled one donation with her pen, Northlight Advisory Trust, routed through a shell named Literacy Futures UK. This organisation doesn't exist on the National Grant Registry, not as a non-profit, not even as a commercial consultancy. It's a ghost front. Damon leaned forward. So, someone's laundering political influence under Camilla's patronage. Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Instead, she folded the page once and asked quietly, "Who else knows you're looking at this?" "No one." "Keep it that way." He held her gaze. "These groups," she continued, "don't operate in isolation. Northlight. I've heard whispers in Treasury corridors, think tank endorsements, access brokering. Some of them have friends in Parliament. Some of them have friends in Cabinet." She turned back to the screen and initiated a sanitized query. Just one donation record from Camilla's recent event, stripped of detail but flagged for database verification. It processed. Then the screen flickered. Access interrupted. Redaction attempt detected. Source unknown. Damon stepped forward, but Eleanor was already typing. The screen flashed once more and reverted to standby. She exhaled slowly. That didn't come from our end. Someone tried to delete the record? Not delete, obscure it. Strip the tag and reroute it to a false archive shell. That's ministry-grade subversion. She looked up. Someone is watching this very closely. Damon's face didn't change, but his voice lowered. Then we keep it off the record. He turned toward the printer again, selected 4 of the flagged documents, and activated a hard copy burn to bypass digital systems entirely. The paper slid out, warm, crisp, quietly damning. Eleanor accepted the pages with a nod. "I'll open an off-book folder, but you need to be careful." Damon looked her dead in the eye. "I am." And now he knew this wasn't just a funding irregularity, it was a power play. And the only question left was, did Queen Camilla know exactly what she was enabling, or had she become the figurehead of something she couldn't control? By the time the first guests began to arrive at Windsor's orangery, the drizzle had turned to sun-filtered haze. The garden paths had been swept, the hedges trimmed to razor symmetry, and a white canopy stretched across the courtyard entrance to shield guests from the remnants of the morning mist. The event was public, ceremonial, part of the Queen Consort's Modern Patronage Initiative, a vaguely defined umbrella celebrating literacy, heritage, and regional arts under a single gilded title. It had been announced with fanfare 2 weeks prior and came bundled with well-timed headlines and smiling press photos. To the public, it was charity. To insiders, it was optics. Sergeant Damon Crestwood stood posted along the western interior path, just outside the reception foyer. His scarlet Coldstream tunic was immaculate, his tall black bearskin hat casting a narrow shadow across his eyes. He was assigned to perimeter movement tracking, essentially watching entry and egress patterns, noting high-profile arrivals. A routine posting, except nothing felt routine anymore. He stood in silence, watching as a procession of donors, trustees, regional figures, and minor lords filtered in. Flutes of elderflower cordial were passed. Laughter drifted under the canopy. And then, near the head table, he saw them. 3 men, well-dressed, mid-50s, no charity pins on their lapels, no royal accreditation, no listed names on the formal registry at the door. But they sat at the centre table, close enough to Camilla's seat to be within whisper distance. Damon's gaze sharpened. He tapped his radio once, low. Crestwood, confirming unregistered guests at table 1. No formal ID badges visible. No one responded. But that wasn't the point. He wasn't asking for clearance. He was creating a record. He adjusted position subtly and lifted a miniature optics pen from his belt. One tap captured a static photo of the table. The card nearest the three men read, Northlight Advisory. Damon felt it in his chest. Quiet, cold recognition. Back in the finance annex, Northlight had been listed as a routing endpoint for one of the falsely registered charities, the same name Eleanor had flagged as a political advisory group masquerading as a non-profit. Here they were, at the Queen Consort's side. The press cameras didn't know them, but Damon did. Camilla rose shortly after, accepting a soft round of applause as she stepped forward to deliver her remarks. Her tone was measured, practiced, not overly sentimental, not lofty. She spoke of new models for partnership, digitally inclusive outreach, and a bold future for British giving. Damon noted her phrasing carefully. Every line was surgically devoid of specificity. When she thanked her most impactful contributors, she named 3 entities. None of them appeared on the official royal funding list. Damon remained motionless, but his pulse ticked faster behind the calm. He scanned the guest registry again. Those entities? All linked to Northlight Advisory through back-end ledger codes. This wasn't coincidence. She was either complicit or being used as the marquee signature for something well beyond ceremony. He watched as she returned to her seat, flanked by the Northlight men, their posture casual, but their eyes anything but. They weren't philanthropists, they were operators. And Damon knew now, the next layer wouldn't be on a podium, it would be behind a door. The luncheon had broken into quiet clusters. Most of the guests had migrated toward the orangery's southern terrace, sipping their drinks, exchanging gentle nods, admiring Camilla's displayed donation plaques. To the untrained eye, it was all harmless charm. But Damon Crestwood had stopped pretending hours ago. His shift technically ended at 1:30, but protocol allowed senior guards to remain in uniform until their replacement arrived. He didn't clock out. He lingered, watching. As the sun slipped behind the clouds again, Damon stepped through one of the inner corridor doors, leading back toward the service wing. He moved with deliberate quiet, boots whispering against the tiled floor. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but as he turned down the conservatory hallway, a voice cut across the hush, sharp and familiar. "I was told those donations were pre-cleared," Camilla snapped, low and clipped. "If Treasury asks, tell them the paperwork was delayed." Damon froze. The door ahead, not fully closed, spilled light into the hallway. Beyond it, the glass-panelled conservatory sat mostly empty, save for Queen Camilla, her private aide, Clarissa Morton, and one of the Northlight men, the broad-shouldered one Damon had seen at lunch. Clarissa's voice followed, hushed but tense. "Ma'am, we've already exceeded safe thresholds. Some of these groups weren't supposed to receive." "Then raise the thresholds," Camilla cut her off flatly. Damon's pulse slowed. Not sped, slowed. It was how his body reacted to stress. Not fight or flight. Stillness. Like ritual. Like training. The Northlight man leaned forward, his voice calm but condescending. "As long as the funds reach our partners, the rest is noise. Your endorsement opens doors. That's all we require." Camilla gave a dry exhale. "And if they shut those doors, they won't. You're the Queen Consort. Everyone forgets that until they need you." Clarissa lowered her voice again. "The Integrity Liaison has been reviewing the ledgers. The young one, Crestwood." Camilla dismissed it with a shrug. "The guards don't read numbers, they salute them." Damon didn't move, didn't breathe. The Northlight man continued, "You've built a pipeline. Don't blink now. All we're doing is routing momentum." Clarissa whispered, "Momentum doesn't go to prison." There was a long pause, then Camilla's voice, steely, composed. "No one's going to prison. Not for donations." She stepped toward the far side of the conservatory, her heels tapping against the stone floor, passing the open glass cabinet lined with her custom charity-branded stationery. Damon leaned back a half step as her silhouette drifted past the edge of the door, not close enough to see him, just enough to register that he wasn't alone in the hallway anymore. He waited. 45 seconds later, he heard the door open fully from inside, followed by footsteps receding into the marble hall. When the last echo vanished, Damon stepped forward and entered. The conservatory was empty, but on the side table lay a stack of folded brochures, embossed with the same design as the one he'd flagged from the fake routing: Northlight Advisory, Horizons Through Patronage. He flipped the booklet. On the back, a discreet gold stamp, QR engraved, the same encrypted tag from the finance annex. Damon didn't speak, didn't curse. He just closed the door gently behind him, because now he knew. The network wasn't theoretical. It was real. It was operational. And it was using the Queen Consort's name like a signature forged in broad daylight. The vehicle didn't come with a motorcade. No crests on the bonnet. No outriders clearing the path. Just a sleek, black sedan pulling into the Windsor staff entrance at 19:06, marked only by the discreet signal light that flickered once before going dark. Sergeant Damon Crestwood stood already waiting near the gate. He'd taken the liberty of remaining in uniform past shift end, a formality officially. But unofficially, no one had questioned it. Not tonight. When the rear door opened, Prince William stepped out. Dark navy coat, gloves in hand, no aides, no press. His expression was unreadable, but the pace of his steps said enough. He wasn't here to speculate. Inside the secure annex chamber, the atmosphere was stripped of pageantry. No throne room, no velvet, just one sealed folder, a redacted printout, and a guard standing straighter than anyone in the country. William nodded once. "Show me." Damon laid out the ledger first. The donations to youth initiatives and heritage grants, all tied to the same back-end wallet. Then the routing comparisons, 6 identical hashes beneath 3 different organizations. Then the pamphlet from Northlight Advisory, the gold-stamped code matching the finance annex printouts. Last came the transcript, handwritten, reconstructed from memory. Damon had taken the risk of copying what he'd heard in the conservatory. Not verbatim, not theatrical, just accurate. The silence between sentences mattered more than the words. William read it all without comment. When he looked up, his voice was steady. "If she is knowingly channeling funds into influence networks," he said, "it becomes a constitutional breach." Damon didn't flinch. "If," William's gaze didn't waver. "We confirm the pipeline, without assumption, without accusation. We don't drag the crown through suspicion." Damon hesitated. "The routing data is enough to freeze the flow," William interrupted gently. "Not enough to confront." He took a breath, then folded the ledger shut. From this moment, all outbound donations associated with the Queen Consort's discretionary patronage accounts are to be paused, internally, quietly. Damon nodded once. Understood. "No one informs her yet. We hold until we have structure, names, full financial lineage." "And the intermediaries?" Damon asked. William looked down at the gold-stamped Northlight brochure. "They're ghosts with titles. They'll vanish the second we move without proof." He turned toward the window, gloved fingers tapping once against the sill. "Tonight," William said calmly, "we follow the money." Damon didn't speak. There was nothing left to ask. Only one path forward now. Not with speeches or confrontation, but with numbers, signatures, and the kind of discipline the tabloids would never write about. William didn't linger. He closed the folder, slid it into his coat, and said quietly before stepping out, "Let no one touch this, not until we know where it ends." And then he left, just like he'd arrived, silent, focused, royalty without spotlight. And behind him, Damon turned back to the terminal, logged into the oldest archived ledger from Camilla's first month of patronage, and began to trace it all the way back to the beginning. The earliest donation linked to Camilla's modern patronage campaign was dated 15 months prior. It was marked as a one-time contribution to a Welsh community theatre initiative. Modest sum, positive press, nothing unusual on the surface. But as Damon Crestwood and Eleanor Marsh dug deeper into the old ledgers from that year, the pattern didn't just hold, it repeated. Every third or fourth disbursement from Camilla's discretionary fund, small, mid-sized, sometimes even ceremonial, routed through shell organisations. Most bore harmless names: the Folklore Reprint Collective, Civic Wellness Foundation, Eastmore Children's Trust. None of them existed in the National Non-Profit Registry. They traced those entries through Royal Secretariat logs. Half had invoices with wildly inflated line items: £42,000 for event tents, £18,500 for printed booklets, £63,200 for digital signage supposedly deployed to a village without a mobile signal. This one, Eleanor muttered, tapping a March transaction, was flagged by Treasury last year but dismissed as a misfiling. Damon reviewed the digital signature. It's not a misfile. It's copy-pasted from a completely different event. They ran that receipt through an overlay tool. The formatting matched two other documents exactly. Same margins, same header alignment, even the same typo in community enrichment, spelled without the second M. The errors weren't sloppy. They were recycled. This whole ledger, Eleanor said, was a cut-and-replace job. Damon opened a separate folder. One Eleanor had marked grey tier. Payment schedules tied not to charities, but to facilitation agents. These individuals weren't employees. They weren't on payroll, but they received quarterly disbursements from sub-funds attached to Camilla's patronage routes. One name appeared 5 times across 3 months. C. Morton. Clarissa. Her private aide. Damon didn't speak. He just opened the attached record. The payments were labelled facilitation services, a phrase that meant everything and nothing. 3,100 here, 4,500 there, a 9,800 instalment tied to a consultant scheduling review that had no outcome report. Eleanor glanced at him. This is how money moves when it's not supposed to. Damon printed the ledger. Across the top of one page, Northlight disbursement tiers. The breakdown listed endorsed, silent partner, and executive track recipients. The third category had just one name, blacked out, but the initials CR were faintly visible beneath the redaction bleed. These aren't charities, Damon said. They're influence brokers, building their own shadow constituency, Eleanor finished. He scanned the final column. One entry caught his eye. A planned donation titled Future Queens Summit Autumn Series. No location, no date, no associated organisation. Scheduled? Likely pending approval. Damon stared at the line. So this wasn't about past events. Eleanor looked over. It's a strategy. He closed the file, slow and silent. With or without her consent. We'll find out, William said. Damon turned. Prince William had entered quietly behind them, coat still damp from the drizzle, gloves in hand. He looked down at the folder without reaching for it. Time to ask her. And with that, the real confrontation began. The blue drawing room had been cleared of its usual flourish. No photographers, no aides, no floral arrangements, just polished wood, a single desk, and 3 chairs placed too far apart to feel conversational. Sergeant Damon Crestwood stood at attention along the interior wall, unmoving beneath the oil portraits. His bearskin hat had been removed, tucked respectfully under his arm. He didn't speak. He was only here to witness. Camilla entered first, without an escort. She wore a steel grey coat dress and pearl earrings, no brooch, no visible makeup. Her expression was perfectly neutral, not defensive, not warm. She looked at Damon once, vaguely, as if acknowledging furniture, then turned toward the desk where William stood, ungloved, a closed file folder under one hand. He didn't greet her. "Thank you for coming, ma'am," he said calmly. Camilla gave a thin smile. When the Prince of Wales requests privacy, one assumes gravity. William opened the folder. Inside were 5 documents. Donation routing logs, invoice overlays, ledgers from 3 of Camilla's patronage branches, and 1 transcribed excerpt from her conservatory conversation. He offered nothing but silence as he handed her the first sheet. Camilla scanned it quickly. "These are my charities." "You fund them as you see fit?" William asked. She looked up, faintly amused. "Is that a trick question?" "No," he said. "It's a constitutional one, because the Crown doesn't fund political influence." She raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" Clarissa Morton entered quietly through the side door, uninvited but not unexpected. Her steps faltered when she saw Damon, but she moved to stand beside Camilla without comment. William tapped the second document. "Your aide's name appears on multiple facilitation payments. Funds routed through shell fronts tied to Northlight Advisory, a group with no registered non-profit status." Camilla remained still. "This," William continued, "is a payment schedule from Clarissa's desk. This is a ledger with backdated approval stamps. This," he said, lifting the final sheet, "is a promotional packet bearing the same encrypted hash from defense-tagged documents routed through our own finance annex. That tag wasn't placed by accident." Camilla stepped closer to the desk, voice even. "Those were ceremonial disbursements, optics, connections. You know how many of these events are maintained by invisible labor?" William met her gaze. "Invisible labor doesn't require MOD-level encryption," Clarissa interjected softly. "They were meant for cross-sector visibility, outreach." "To whom?" William asked. "Cabinet liaisons? Advisory intermediaries? Private influence brokers whose only charity is to themselves?" Camilla's tone chilled. "You're using language reserved for scandal, not oversight." William lifted the packet. "You signed this. This network was built under your patronage. It now roots more influence than half the Commons' backbenchers, and not once was it declared." She turned sharply toward Damon. "This guard is overstepping." William stepped fully between them. "No, he's doing his duty, as am I." There was a long pause. Only the faint ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. Then William spoke the words that ended it. "Effective immediately, your discretionary patronage fund is suspended. Treasury will oversee future allocations. No donation moves without institutional review. No aid approves without cross-signature. Your outbound engagements will be reassessed." Camilla's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. Clarissa lowered her gaze. Damon stood silent. And just like that, the reversal happened. Not with yelling, not with scandal, but in a room with 3 chairs and a folder full of proof. The command came through at 07:12 the next morning. 3 words only. "Initiate Treasury seizure." Damon Crestwood watched from the interior corridor of the finance annex as Eleanor Marsh arrived with her audit team. No less than 5 civil servants in navy overcoats, each carrying sealed registers and portable scanners. They moved through Windsor like a surgical team, precise and silent, trailing red-sealed document tubes and protective binders. Within the hour, access to all active patronage accounts under the Queen Consort's name had been restricted. The internal finance system relabeled them under Review Pending. A thin grey banner now replaced Camilla's digital crest on every financial interface. The interface looked harmless, but every royal secretary who saw it knew exactly what it meant. Clarissa Morton's email access was temporarily disabled by noon. She was escorted, without cuffs, to the neutral staff wing. Not fired, not yet, just removed from proximity. Northlight Advisory's palace event credentials were stripped within the day. An internal circular went out across the household. All non-governmental advisory entities scheduled for upcoming royal events are to be cross-cleared via Treasury before further contact. Publicly, nothing had changed, but behind the scenes, it had all been rearranged. Camilla's outbound appearances were postponed for scheduling alignment. Her personal stationery was removed from the charity event pipeline. The upcoming Future Queens Summit, once announced via private email, was quietly scrubbed from the upcoming engagements. No headlines, no scandal, just absence. And behind it all, Damon moved like a ghost in uniform, not directing, not intervening, assisting. He escorted Eleanor's team to the interior vault that held the Master Ledger archive. He signed the chain of custody papers. He rechecked the encryption tags against the files they had uncovered, not one mistake. Later that evening, as the annex lights dimmed and the last of the red-sealed boxes were stacked for transport, Prince William returned. No coat this time, just the formal Royal Navy blue jacket and gloves under one arm. He stopped beside Damon, watching the Treasury team load the evidence into the secured transport vehicle. "This would have expanded unchecked," William said, "if you hadn't seen what didn't belong." Damon didn't turn. "I wasn't supposed to be reading anything." "That's the point," William said. They stood together in silence as the final box was wheeled into the van. No medals were issued, no ceremony called, just a silent acknowledgement that protocol had worked, not as formality, but as resistance. Later, after everyone had gone, Damon walked through the gravel path behind the east wing. The rain had come again, light and persistent, glistening across the cobblestones. The orangery where it had started was dark now. The tables cleared, the bouquets removed. No Northlight men in tailored suits, no laughter. Just the scent of wet earth and old stone. He passed the southeast guardhouse on the way out, nodding once at the junior posted there. The young man saluted. Damon didn't return it. He simply adjusted his gloves, straightened his back, and kept walking. No one clapped, no one noticed. But in a palace where influence moved in silence, someone had stood still. And that had been enough. Should a royal guard be allowed to investigate royal finances if something doesn't feel right? Do you think Sergeant Damon Crestwood uncovered a genuine threat? Or was this just the surface of something deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Make sure to like this video if you believe protocol should never bow to power, and subscribe with the bell icon turned on so you don't miss what really happens behind the crown's closed gates. Share this video with someone who still thinks royal donations are all about charity. Watch the next story on your screen now, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same watch.